I am here to talk about my journey, my faith journey. And it hasn't been a straight line. It really hasn't been a straight line. I do try to live in faith and I try to live in right action, but I'm a human being. And so I'm gonna walk you through my story and give you some of the faith parts and some of the doubt too. So I feel like I've been looking for the signs, looking for the symbols, trying to find God since I was a little kid, a really little kid. I remember I grew up in a house where there was more than one faith perspective. And I got to go to different houses of worship and different places of worship. My mother was Catholic, my father was not. And I remember sitting in beautiful, beautiful places, beautiful houses of worship, and looking at just the architecture, looking at the artifacts and some of the glass in the windows and just the beauty of some of it. And some of it was very simple, but it was so beautiful. And I thought then, as maybe like 5 or 6, that there was absolutely a power greater than myself, that there was absolutely a God. All these spiritually centered people all over the world were onto something, right? I was like, they're onto something. So in my 6-year-old mind, I'm like, I'm gonna keep following the signs. I'm gonna keep on keeping. So fast forward, I'm growing up in upstate New York. I grew up outside of Albany in a small town, and it was a wonderful place to grow up, but it was also a difficult place to grow up. There was a lot of economic demoralization. It had been part of what was historically the leather stocking region in New York. And so when a lot of that moved abroad, people didn't really have a lot going for them after that, economically at least. But they did have a sense of community, and they had a sense of faith. So I'm growing up there, and my dad is a construction worker, and my mother was a clerk in a jewelry store. And I thought that they were just amazing human beings. They loved us, they loved my brothers. I had 2 brothers. I'm the oldest, but neither one of them had ever gone to college. And so I wasn't really sure, I didn't really have a plan. And I was thinking about it one day, maybe my junior year, and I thought, well, you know what, I think I do want to go to college. I think I do. But I want to go someplace where, I can find more signs, right? So I picked a school that had the word saint in it, because I figured, hey, saint. And I ended up going to St. Lawrence, which is in upstate New York. And I learned a little bit about St. Lawrence, and I thought, okay, this is fine, this is great, I'm supposed to be here. As a first-gen college student, I was absolutely convinced that and my family was too, that I needed to be like a medical doctor or a lawyer. So I went and I started doing that, and wasn't really sure, right? And I hadn't been that many places along the way, like growing up. I'd been on vacation in like South Carolina and things like that. But St. Lawrence, back in the days when I was there, had something called a J term. I don't know if you know anybody that might go to a school with a January term. And so what that meant is that there was this one thing that you could do for the whole month of January. You could really focus on something. And St. Lawrence had these broad J terms. And so I applied, and I got a scholarship to go and study in Israel my sophomore year for that month. And I went over there, and it was focusing on like the history and roots of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And I went over there, and I walked around in Jerusalem on the streets that Jesus Christ had carried the cross. I was at the Temple Mount. I was at the Wailing Wall. And again, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that there was God and that there was this power greater than myself. It's electric. You can feel it. There's an energy there that is indisputable, that there is a God and that it's infinite and eternal and all-encompassing of everything. So I came back from that and I said, the heck with law school. I'm going to become a religious studies major. And I picked up a religious studies major. I kept the pre-law government track, but I really found like something special in the religious studies. And I did that and I finished that and I graduated. And I thought, okay, what's next for me? I need to find the next sign. I need to follow the next sign. And that came in the form of going on to divinity school. So I moved to Boston. I packed up my, little beater of a car, and I drove down, with my St. Lawrence sticker, and I went to Harvard Divinity School. And I was like, wow, this is a really funky kind of spirituality here at Harvard Divinity School. If you've ever been to Harvard Divinity School, you know what I'm talking about. And they were like really into sustainability and like whole planet and, all kinds of spirituality. So it was a fun place to go to divinity school. And while I was there, I met a guy. Yeah. In the library, no less. Yep. In the Harvard Graduate School of Education library, I meet this guy. And I'm like, this, wow, what is this? I'm madly in love with this person. And that person happened to then go to grad school over here at Boston College in the Carroll School. And so, being the madly in love person that I was, I decided that, I was going to take a class over at BC. And you can do that as a divinity school student. You can do that through something called the Boston Theological Institute. So I registered and I took this class and I was over here and the relationship went south very badly. He didn't want me anymore. He threw me away. And my heart was broken. We didn't have cell phones, or at least I didn't have one. And so, it wasn't like I got a text, but he broke up with me and said, it's over. But I came to class over here anyways, because I never missed class. So I came over, I probably took the green line and cried the whole way. Anyways, I went to class, and then after class, I walked around campus and I thought, wow, this place, it's home. There's a community here that I can't explain. It's that feeling that I had before. It's that feeling of connection to something, this conscious contact with God. And I don't know why it was happening, but it was happening. And I sat on the steps of St. Ignatius, sobbing my eyes out, sobbing about, this great love that I lost. And, people were walking by and I decided hey, you know what, maybe I should go in somewhere so I'm not on display here. And I went and I tried to get into St. Ignatius and the door was locked, the front door. So I sat back down and I sobbed more. And then I got up and tried the door again, it was gonna be different, right? But it was different. It was open and there was nobody in there. So someone had unlocked it because they probably heard me out there ah! And I went inside and I just sat there and I felt the presence of God. I felt like it was gonna be okay, right? This person didn't love me anymore, but God loved me. And I was lovable still. So fast forward from that, that's the early 90s. And St. Ignatius is kind of burned into my mind at that point. And I had taken this class here through the BTI, and I wanted to come back. I'd taken a class with John McDar, who like literally just, I was like in my early 20s, right? And John McDar like literally just retired like last year or something. So he's been here, he's just been this constant in my life all these years, these decades. So I decided I was going to come back eventually. And in the meantime, I ended up actually I ended up marrying an Irish Catholic guy. And I got married in St. Ignatius. So I was like, yeah. I got married in St. Ignatius, and it was a moment of like, faith again. It was like, oh my gosh, this is the good stuff. This is really good stuff. And there was this thread, this continuous thread of like all these pieces coming together for me. A couple of years later, we were having a baby, and the baby, it was really, really difficult. And the baby had a really tough time, and I had a really tough time. And I thought, where's God in all of this, right? Like, I don't want to lose my baby. Like, this is not good. And things, so I'm there. And the baby makes it. And the baby, they finally take care of the baby enough to give me the baby. And the baby's got a little blue nose and little blue fingers because the baby needed oxygen. And if you're anybody here from the Canal School of Nursing? Yeah, okay, so he had an APGAR of 1. Yeah, not so good, but the baby did okay. And then I'm looking at the baby, and I'm looking at this beautiful, beautiful human being. My son, John Henry DeVoy IV, because I got really creative with naming. And again, there was faith. And I knew again, looking at that little face with those little kind of still blue fingers, because they hadn't pinked up yet, that God was everything, that God was love, and that this love, that was a really, really special love. That made the love I had sobbing on the stairs of St. Ignatius pale in comparison to this love. So I had this baby. I ended up coming back to BC. I came back to do a PhD in developmental psych. It was developmental psych at the time, and they changed the title while I was in the program. And it felt good. It felt like home. And everything felt okay, right? Comfort, faith, love. And then suddenly, my brother died suddenly. My younger brother died. And I was not expecting that. He was like I'm the oldest. He was 7.5 years younger than me. I remember like when he was a baby, like sitting in his crib and holding him, and just like, I remember like, taking him to buy school clothes, and he died very suddenly and in a really tragic way. He was, he had hurt his back skiing, and he was prescribed pain medication for his back, and he used the pain medication, and then he used more of the pain medication and more. And, one thing went to another, and he died of an overdose. And, the American Medical Association has talked about addiction being a disease for, well over half a century. But it still felt really painful. If he had died of cancer, if he had died in a car accident, I don't think it would have felt different, but I was concerned. I was so hurt that happened. But it's a medical disease, progressive, incurable, and fatal if left untreated. And I remember standing there in the morgue because I had to go identify his body. And I didn't believe in God anymore. I was like, nah, that was a good story that I was telling myself, but no. I told myself I wasn't gonna cry. It's not crying, there's just something in my eyes. But in the aftermath of that, like I said, I was a doctoral student here at Boston College, and BC was there for me. They were there. There were people, faculty members that were my mentors, Jackie Lerner and David Bluestein, who are still here, who were there for me. And we had a remembrance, memorial for Jason in St. Ignatius. And it was pretty amazing. It was special. And I felt faith again. So again, fast forward, time goes on and I finish and I go in the world and I do other things and then I come back here and I'm lucky to get to work with undergrads. I'm so lucky. I love undergrads. I love them. I love the developmental stage. I love the fact that they're whole people. They're not just like academic or cognitive. They're social, emotional, they're spiritual, they're biological, they're physical, they're whole people. Developmentalists have always thought that you were whole people. And so this is like very special for me. So I try really hard, I do. And I fail. I make mistakes. I've made some really big ones. And I've been really scared about them and really ashamed about some of them. But I know that my God is a God of love. And that God is a forgiving God, right? Like, it is so amazing to be forgiven. The better to forgive, or better to be forgiven than forgive, better to love than to be loved. So the last couple of years have been really hard. They've been really hard. I think they've been hard for a lot of people. 2019 was tough. I had family members, immediate family members that were hospitalized. 2020, we all know what happened, March of 2020. Really tough, really, really tough. When undergrads are suffering, I can't help but not feel that pain because I love them so much. And because I care about them being okay. In May of 2020, my father died suddenly. We didn't really get to celebrate his life because if you think about it, that was like really heavy-duty pandemic and people couldn't gather. And that was spring of 2020. Fall was just, very strange, because when you're trying to connect in the first year program and you love undergrads and they're like, on Zoom, it's a different thing. And BC did an amazing job navigating that. In the winter of 2021, I was walking out on the ice on Lake Winnipesaukee with a little beagle, a little pocket beagle that I got. It was a COVID puppy. And I fell through the ice. And the beagle ran off. He wasn't going to stick around and save me. And I broke my leg falling through the ice. And I thought, oh, there's, my dad died, broke my leg, I'm on crutches. And 4 weeks later, my mother died suddenly. And so I was like, back to this place of like really darkness and doubt and like, where's God? The world is suffering, I'm suffering, where's God in all of this? And somebody asked me to do the Mass of Remembrance over at the Newton Chapel in May of 2021. And I went over there and it was the first time, again, I was with all these like people in this beautiful space. And it's the first time that I was living in faith again. Living in faith, acting in faith, and knowing again that like, hey, I messed up a bunch of times, things that I think, wow, can I be forgiven? But God still loves me, and God is there. God is definitely there. The last year has been hard too. Like, I think I just did not even acknowledge some of the grief that I had experienced the year before. And I've been trying to like work on that and like, you know, try to like accept more help, which is never easy for me, at least. I think that's something that if you can learn to just accept help, wow, it's such an act of strength to accept help. So I'm here, and I do believe in a power greater than myself. I believe that forgiveness is truly the greatest gift. If you've ever been forgiven by somebody, doesn't it feel good? Yeah, it does. And I believe that that is also like that is such an amazing example of God's love. God doesn't expect anything in return, nothing in return, and just gives us this love and gives us this forgiveness. And I just leave you with, you know, if you can even act in 1/10 of the way that that shows forgiveness and love, then you're doing the next right thing. So I think that's all I got.